Now, we've talked a bit this week about the United States Vice President Kamala Harris. We've shown you a video a couple of times of her doing some sort of stunt with some actors. I want to show you another video now of a speech she's given with a very guilt-ridden, pessimistic version of America's past that's opened her up to more criticism. Have a look.
Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
Let's go then for reaction to Barbara Heineback, who's a former Democrat White House staffer. Good to talk to you again, Barbara. What's your view of that sort of encapsulation of American history, that sort of guilt-ridden view of America's past? Do you think that the Vice President went too far?
Chris, is the Vice President, has she been living under a rock most of her life? I was always taught you don't bite the hand that feeds you. Her parents came here as immigrants. She has had more opportunity than most Americans get. She has watched and grown up, and her parents chose to bring their child up in a country that provides opportunity. And it's as though she's missed the last 150 years of American history. Kamala was given the job of, the first thing President asked her to do was to go down and solve some of the concerns at the border. Now, neither one of them would call it a problem, of course, but just a problem. And she placed her candidacy when she was actually going through the campaign. She kept saying how positive she was about the idea of open borders, that everyone could come who wanted to come, and they should, and there should be no wall, no borders. And now, the last couple of weeks, finally, she's saying, don't come, do not come. So this is a ploy that she's using. When the president asked her to take care of the border, she wouldn't even go to the border. What did she do? After a few weeks of hiding in her little cave, she decided to go to Guatemala and to Mexico and talk to people overseas. She has no background in foreign policy, by the way. And then when she finally, a couple of months after she was given this responsibility, she went to a very small area at the border, went to the airport, stayed about 20 minutes, and then took off. And now the last week and beginning of this week, they have finally had the president has finally had some officials come together to try to solve some of the egregious problems and really crisis at the border. Where was Kamala? She was developing a paid commercial by a public relations firm.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that in a moment. Yeah, I mean, you're so right. It's such a massive problem on the border. It's supposed to be her issue to fix. She hasn't done so. Do you think there's more focus on her now because of the obvious concerns about the president? Is it dawning on most of America that they're likely to see Kamala Harris as president, perhaps after the midterms?
Chris, we're looking at out of the frying pan and into the fire. You know, this is such a sad time for America. I don't like having to say this, you know, as a woman, our first woman vice president, but people now recognize that Kamala Harris does not have the wherewithal to become president of the United States. With all of these immigrants at the border, it's going to increase crime, which has been on the rise since January. We have problems with health. And America now, a lot of companies are saying if you're not at least single or doubly vaccinated, you're going to lose your job. However, illegals can just march right in, float around the country, and the old catch and release and go all over without coming back.
It's history repeating itself for certain when it comes to that issue. Now, you mentioned that paid bit of video propaganda that the Vice President put out. We've had a bit of fun with that during the week. Let's just show another clip of that for anyone who's missed it.
Never let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. Never let anybody suggest to you that you are what they think you should be. You tell them who you are and who you know you are and what you intend to be.
Barbara, it just cracks me up every time. She's telling them not to let people tell them who they should be, but they're actors. So that's kind of their job description, right?
Yeah, they were paid to say the words that they said. And while the president had called in some of his Secret Service and FBI, CIA, and others, finally, beginning of last week, to start to resolve the problems at the border, what did they do with the vice president? They send Kamala off to go play with the children and develop a new image video to try to make her image a little better. This is a sad, sad point for America. And the politicians know what they're doing, because we had 15,000 to come under the border in Rio and Del Rio, Texas, but they wouldn't show that on most stations in America. CNN and others refused to show it. Your station showed it, and a couple of others. But what happened then? All of a sudden, the authorities came in and said, well, you can't send drones, you can't show these pictures because it's interrupting part of what we're trying to do for security purposes. The Democrat Party did not want the nation and the world to see how many thousands of illegals were crossing the border to come in.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to hide that, that's for sure. Thanks so much for joining us, Barbara. Sorry to cut you off. We are out of time. Great to talk to you again.
Okay.
Barbara Heineback there, former advisor in Democrat White Houses in days gone by.